Hello, beloved, and welcome back to my channel, and welcome to episode 3 of Real Talk with Krystal. So, based on your feedback, you shared that you love these podcast episodes being available on my YouTube channel, so I'm going to continue making them this way. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm really excited to film and record this episode as I'm talking about one of my favorite things on this planet, which is the path of Tantra, and sharing also some intimate parts of my journey and most specifically, my sexual empowerment journey, which has been a very complex and interesting one. I explored a lot of this energy as a path as well in my lifetime so far. Honestly, this could probably be a series. Maybe I'll turn it into it based on your feedback. If you love hearing about this, I could definitely make a few more episodes on these topics. So again, if you have any ideas for topics or things that you would love to hear me talk about, share it in the comments. And if you love this podcast, go follow on Spotify or iTunes and give it a 5 stars because it helps a lot. And if you are interested in diving more into tantric and divine feminine practices, and you identify as a sister, as a goddess, then I would love to invite you to my new program, Tantric Goddess Tuesdays. This is a private sisterhood of weekly lives. We meet every Tuesday and we dive into everything divine feminine, tantric practices, empowerment practices, sensual embodiment, dance, and all of that fun stuff. It's just a place of play, really, and of growth and connecting, rewriting the stories around sisterhood, and really opening to pleasure and enjoying this moment and sisterhood and everything else that comes up intuitively in that space. So I like to plan the topics and the practices that I share there, but I also want it to be very open for whatever comes up within the group that we've co-created. So I will link that in this video description, or you can just go to KrystalAranyani.com/tantric. Okay, my loves, let's begin episode 3. Hello, beloved. So I would like to begin one of our first episodes on the show sharing a little bit about my path with Tantra and sexual empowerment, as well as a little bit about Tantra, what my definition of it is, and my experience in it, as it is a very mysterious path. There is a lot of confusion around this path, especially in the West. I've really had the honor to spend a significant amount of time in Eastern Asia, learning this path, learning about Hinduism, diving into yoga and these beautiful ancient paths based out of India mostly. And when I came back to the West, which was about 4 years ago, so I was in Asia for most of my 20s, and I Googled Tantra as I was looking for a tantric ashram, and I was very surprised to see what was online about Tantra, as at that point I had only learned traditional Tantra, which is a very profound and just incredible approach and path of life, a very profound spiritual path. And when you look online, it's all to do with sexuality and sexual techniques and all of these things that I'm sure you're familiar with. And then I put Tantra teacher on my Instagram, and I had all these men asking me all these wild things. And it's not like I am afraid of those topics. If you've followed me, you know that I'm quite sexually expressive. I don't shy away from that energy and that part of my life. But I never saw Tantra as that. So in the past few years of my teachings, I've actually started to weave these together more. At first, I kind of felt like it was my duty and responsibility to this sacred path to really share it with others in a way that is respectful to this path. As many of you know, yoga, for example, has been turned into something completely different in the West. And I just didn't want to see that happen with this beautiful tradition. But now, to be honest, sex is a part of it because it is all of life. Tantra is all of life. So I've kind of brought the two together, but not as much as other teachers. So the reason why Tantra is seen as this sexual path and this path of sexual intimacy and sexual liberation is because it is one spiritual path that doesn't require you or encourage you to renounce all of worldly life. And for many yogic paths, for example, and many other spiritual paths, it's seen as wrong to desire material pleasures and even to enjoy sacred union, our sex. And for many of us in the West, we grew up with Abrahamic religion and Christianity. Just a side note here, I'm not putting down these religions. Actually, Tantra can be woven into any religion, so they're not separate. But growing up with these paths, it is definitely seen as a shameful thing, especially in the history of these religious paths, to enjoy sex and to be sexual. And there's a lot of punishing, and that energy is sinful. So it comes with a lot of shame and suppression around these parts of ourselves. And then here comes Tantra, which is a path of truly embracing all that it is, all that it means to be human. It's fully embracing this human experience, the sexual side, the shadow sides, the dark sides, the sides that we shy away from and we see as wrong and we don't want to talk about, our shadow self, if you want to call it that. Tantra is embracing it all as divine, which can be a confusing concept to grasp when there's so much pain happening in the world. How could that be divine? And I'll actually talk about that in a moment. So the beauty I find of Tantra is that it is very experiential. It's all of life. And one of my favorite things about religions such as Hinduism is there's so many different ways to interpret it. There's so many different sects of Hinduism, so many different paths that you can follow based on which deity you resonate with, based on your own personal experience. It's not like, here's this book and this is what it means and you need to follow it exactly like this. Of course, there's a lot of etiquette and things like that, but it's just very open to where you want to go with it. Whereas I find some religions are more closed off, and I'm a very adventurous person and imaginative. So I like to have that freedom of how can I make this path my own. And in this way, I find anyone who really experiences Tantra and this path may have their own definition. So my definition of Tantra is to truly open fully to this human experience, embracing it all as divine, including the dark or the bad times, accepting ourselves on all levels, the light and the dark, seeing it all as equal. And as we do this, and as we release shame around our humanness, we reach heightened states of bliss, and we have this spiritual experience, which ultimately is coming back to spirit, coming back to our true selves. So I have a very romanticized view of this existence. I am a romantic at heart. I'm a very idealistic person with a very big imagination. And I have to watch this in relationships because I can easily idealize the situation or the person. But anyway, something I'm working on. But I'm sharing this because it plays in to how I view this existence. So there's an example, an analogy in Christopher Wallace's book, and I really recommend this if you're interested in tantric philosophy of traditional tantra. And he gives this analogy, and this isn't going to be spot on because I'm just summing it up, that basically imagine you're this just bubble of bliss floating around in infinite time and space, and everything's fine, and you're just existing, and it's beautiful, and you're in the cosmos. You're just pure potentiality and consciousness, bliss, ananda. And you're up there floating around. And then there's this button. So this button appears, and if you press this button, it will bring you to a world where you can experience duality and you can experience yourself in many different forms. But the thing about this world is that there's pain and there's suffering. It's almost like a video game is how I see it. in a video game, you're not just going, like, it would be quite boring if there was no challenges, if there wasn't the possibility of dying, of death, of failing, of things going not the way that you want them to. So in this world of duality, it can turn out any way. And you are all of these forms experiencing different realities. And in the book, he says, it's not a matter of if you're going to press the button, but when. And to me, that really explains, why is there pain? Why is there this polarity and duality in this world? And of course, it's hard to grasp. And this is a huge other topic I'm not going to get into. But when you experience pain, you can find bliss through that. I touch a little bit about that in the first episode of this. I found it myself in the most painful experience and moments of my life. I found bliss there. And a big part of that is remembering this is all temporary. And I am this eternal bliss at my core. And basically, I see all of us as embodiments of Shiva and Shakti, of energy and consciousness. And we are simply here to experience one another and to be present, to experience this life. And a sacred union, sex, is experiencing one another in the highest form that we possibly can. And through that, we can create new forms. We can create life. And to me, that is the most sacred possible experience we can have in this existence. We are literally becoming embodiments of Shiva and Shakti and experiencing ourselves through one another. And personally, I feel that is the purpose of this existence. So with all that being said, throwing all that philosophy at you, I could just talk about that forever, but I want to talk a little bit about my personal experience as well. So on the topic of sexuality, I grew up very sexual. And when I say that, I mean I grew up with a sexual energy that attracted a lot of attention, and it was never my intention. From a very young age, in elementary, I remember there were high school boys hanging out, talking about me, wanting to see me like outside of the school, and it made me super uncomfortable. I developed breasts quite young, and it was just this energy and mannerism that I've always had that always gets this attention, and it's not something that is always good in our society, because it causes issues. Like, for example, my accounts might be deleted on social media simply because of the way that I show up. And then there's others who have the same pictures as me and they have no problem. So this energy has always been very present in my life. I've naturally expressed it, and I've naturally been comfortable with it. I didn't really grow up in an environment that was shaming me and that side of me in any way. But of course, society shames it, and that is in the collective consciousness. So in my early 20s, I had all of this sexual energy and this big imagination that I've mentioned. So naturally, I had a lot of wild fantasies, and I really wanted to explore that part of me, and I did. And I became an exotic dancer. A big part of that, well, I wanted to make the money and have freedom to live my life however I wanted and create a new life for myself. I won't, lie about that. That was a big part of it. But it was also so that I could express this part of me without being judged in an environment where it was being celebrated. And obviously, it's not always the healthiest environment in there. Most of the time, it's not. I never had any negative experiences personally, and I think that's the way that you hold yourself and the energy that you attract. Most of the men that I spoke to during that time were absolute gentlemen to me. I'm not promoting it anyways to any women listening to this, but I do think in life, it's how you approach things and how you hold yourself is going to create the experience that you have. So basically, I was at this time in my life where I'm in the strip club, and then I'm also spending my days in a yogic community, in an ashram, and going in between the two. I was also modeling. This is in Asia is where it started, and then I just kept traveling. But I loved dressing up. I loved being this sexual, sensual goddess and spending an hour on getting all glamorous. And then I also like not wearing makeup and having dreadlocks and teaching yoga and being this nice yogi girl. So I was in this world that was like a tug of war between worlds. And in each world, due to this, I felt very inauthentic. I wanted to wear makeup in the ashram, but some people would make comments and that I was too sexual, etc., or that I cared too much how I looked. And then in the other world, I couldn't have dreadlocks, and no one knew what the hell I was talking about when I'm talking about consciousness and Shiva and Shakti and the sacredness of what we're doing. So it was just this weird time in my life where I felt like I had to hide who I was all of the time. And eventually I ended up renouncing. I only danced for a year, but after that I renounced everything and I cut out my extensions when I took plant medicine. I had this big awakening that, oh my gosh, I need to follow this monk lifestyle that is renouncing everything and not caring about my outer appearance and not having desires and not wanting to be abundant and successful in worldly life. So I got rid of all my clothes. I had one little suitcase that I was traveling with, stopped wearing makeup, got rid of that whole part of my life. And I didn't feel empowered at all, actually. And I didn't feel authentic, but I was just following this yogi lifestyle, became a yoga teacher, and I was happy, but I just didn't feel empowered. And then one day I was in Byron Bay in Australia and I found this event on Facebook. I was trying to network more with the yoga community there. And I showed up at this women's gathering and this lady, she was teaching kundalini. And it was the first time I ever saw an embodied goddess. She was wearing makeup. She was wearing jewels. She was adorned so beautifully. She was in this gorgeous white gown and she was teaching kundalini, but she was so sensually and sexually empowered. And she expressed this energy in a way that taught me that it's sacred, that I don't have to go to the strip club to express this part of myself, that I can express it in a way that demands respect and love and in this soft form of the feminine that doesn't have to be so shameful. And she was just beautiful and I was so drawn to her energy. Nowadays, you can just jump on Instagram and there's many of us there being embodied goddesses in our goddess dresses and sharing these paths as we do. But back then, this was, 7 or 8 years ago, I had never seen anything like that in person or online. And I'm like, what is she doing? I want all of this. This is my life. It just woke up this energy in me, like this sleeping goddess energy, like yes. Oh my gosh, this is it. This is my permission slip that I get to be all of these things and I don't have to hide them away and be ashamed of them. I can be all of the things and I can have all of the things. I can be this nice yogi girl and I can be this tantric goddess and I can be this sexually empowered woman and I can be this CEO businesswoman and I can be a sister and I can be a daughter and I can have all of these different energies. I don't have to choose just one path. I don't have to never wear makeup again and I don't have to live this material world because I want abundance for myself. I get to weave together all of my dreams and my desires and these parts of myself to create this embodied woman. And as soon as I realized that and I brought all these aspects in and accepted them as equally divine, because one part of myself is not more shameful than the other, despite what society has taught us. It is all equal, it's all divine. And when I fully realized that and embodied those parts and showed up in my full authentic self, that's when I started calling in incredible men, incredible lovers. That's when I started calling in clients and I started getting picked to teach at huge events around the world. That's when my career exploded and that's when my community started to grow online. Literally the day that I realized I can be all of these things and I'm going to be all of these things and I'm not going to let society put me into this box and this is who I am. And hello world, this is me, this is Krystal, this is the real Krystal. And everything changed from that point. So the greatest gift of Tantra for me has been the realization that I can be all of the things. And that is the beauty of the feminine, which is in all of us, no matter your gender. That feminine essence, that Shakti is within us, and that is her beauty. That she is complex, multifaceted, she is multi-dimensional, and she is all of the things. And she reminds us that we can have all of the things. We can have material, spiritual, emotional, financial, abundance on all levels. We don't have to choose one thing. All aspects of ourself are equally divine and equally worthy. We get to play in this world, just not attached to it, not base our worth on these temporary experiences and pleasures and external materials. We get to play with those, but they don't define who we are. Always remembering our true nature. Okay, meow. I love talking about that. I could talk about it forever, but again, I'm trying to keep these episodes under half an hour, at least my solo episodes. And that is just such a fun part of my journey because it was such an awakening for me. It was really awakening the goddess. That's where my book came from. And that book just also was channeled through me in a month after all of this happened. I talk about it more in that book as well. So I hope this episode is a reminder that you don't need to be put into a box, that all parts of you are worthy and equal. I know this is hard to grasp at times because of all the pressures and judgment society puts onto us, but that's why this work is so important. Focusing on ourselves and really discovering who we are so that you know who you are, and then you just show up and allow the world to adjust to that. And yes, life gets to be that good. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, loves, I really hope you've enjoyed this episode. Again, if you like it, please give it a 5-star review. It would mean so much to me as we begin this journey together. And if you're interested in Tantric Tuesdays, again, this is just an invitation for sisters, but I would love to play with you in that space and to grow and to rise together. So the link is in the description. And sending you so much love along your own sexual empowerment and self-acceptance and self-celebration journey.